Actually, it's really cool that you actually got together with a guy like John Taylor. He, like you, I've always thought that he was a kind of an innovator guy in his own right, in the sense that I love his fucking bass lines because he's very melodic. Yeah. But if you remember going back, he never really played anything that anybody else really played, you know? So at one point, I think he was on Area, but I remember when he went with the Power Station, he was the first guy I ever seen play at Kubicki. Your other artist, Stu Ham, also used to play at Kubicki back in those older days, right? But I think Taylor came first. When I saw John playing one of those things, it was like, whoa, what the hell is that thing? You know, and that had that extra one fret to get to a D with a little flip off like switch over here.
Yeah.
Always really seeking something different. I'm like that too. And you are definitely like that. So the fact that the two of you were able to hook up and that he's playing a Dingwall with the first leaf preamp in it, this is meant to be, dude.
I've got an interesting story about Kubicki. I remember when the Guitar Player magazine reviewed the first Kubicki bass. That was a revision before the one John had. And I remember I was in Edmonton. I bought the magazine. I pulled over to the side of the road and I just read that review probably 3 times just so I could. It was written by Rick Turner. Sorry.
Rick Turner.
And yeah. And so I read and reread everything Rick said. And I tried to visualize in his mind because Rick was pretty blown away by the instrument. And therefore, I was blown away by the instrument. The first NAMM show I ever went, Phil Kubicki was one of the guys that I looked up just to meet him, say hi, and see one of his basses in person. He was a cool guy, and we got to talking, and we kind of hit it off, and he offered me a job. He said, if you ever want to come down to California, look me up, you can come work for me. And I was like, wow, that'd be amazing. It was one of those things where I'm in Canada, I'd have to do a whole lot of paperwork, and just didn't have the means to do that. Plus, I had my own vision. I was wanting to do pretty bad. So he was always just the most generous, cool guy. Steinberger gets the credit for the headless bass, but Phil actually did it first.
So Phil was the first guy to do the headless bass. Then Ned Steinberger went ahead and did that.
This is the story assembled from several different sources. I think the first headless guitar bass or any kind of guitar shaped instrument that we know of was Allan Gittler. He was out of New York, and it was more of an art project. Actually, there's an interesting story with Gittler too, because I was a touring musician, wasn't really sure what my next move was going to be. And again, in Edmonton, I go into a music store and there's a Gittler there, and I go, whoa, I've never seen one of these. And I picked it up and I played it. And are you familiar with the Gittler?
That's not the Klein guy, right?
No. Steve Klein, he was another influence. If you look at the Synchronicity 2 video, Andy Summers is playing what looks like a fish skeleton. Oh. It's just a metal rod with metal rods.
Okay.
And it looks like a stage prop, but that's a Gittler guitar. It actually plays. No body, there's no neck. It's just rods and strings. Because there's no fingerboard, you can grab those strings and you can vibrato entire chords just with your left hand. And I was just like blown away. And at that moment, I was like, okay, this is exciting. I want to start experimenting with modifying guitars, scalloped fretboards, on and on and on. And that led to my business. So Allan was a busker in New York. He had a machinist in Brooklyn making these guitars for him. And a little while later, some guy named Ned came up to the machinist and asked him if he would make a bass for him. And the machinist said, no, I just make these for Allan. And so that's the rumor, was where Ned got the idea for the headless. Can't confirm it because Ned's off the scales brilliant. Maybe he came up with the idea independently, and that wouldn't surprise me either. But Gittler was an influence. Kubicki was an influence.
And Klein
was where I first saw the multi-scale frets, the Novax frets. Steve Klein's I-Ching guitar that he made for Joni Mitchell was the first guitar that blew my mind to what the possibilities were of being a small shop, progressive, innovative guitar builder. To make this long story even longer, the very first Kubicki I ever saw in person in a store in Calgary, it got sold. It eventually made it into my shop, and this was made by Fender Custom Shop, and they misplaced the nut by an eighth of an inch. And so I repaired that base, moved the nut to its proper position, and it went off and it disappeared, and eventually showed up in Toronto about 3 years ago. The original owner said, "Hey, Sheldon, I know you always wanted that base. I've tracked it down for you. It's for sale." And so friends of mine at F Base and friends of theirs went out and they bought the base for me, took it to F Base shipped it to me. And it's like, so it's sitting in my office right now.
Come on, dude. That is amazing. What an amazing story.
As is a Gittler. I've got a Gittler and a Kubicki, and a Fury guitar, who is another huge influence. They're all in my office, and I look at them every day.
You know, the fact that you're able to have these stories and also be surrounded in your office by the journey of your inspiration. I just did a whole kind of a course video where I talked about that I am surrounded by an audience every day in my studio with my 110 Funko dolls of every rock star that ever inspired me that is around me on the walls.
Interesting.
I'm never alone, you know. I've got everybody from everybody right here, all around me. And my favorite instruments, I've got cars that are bolted to the wall. I have a Jeep grill with a set of lights that are like bolted to my front window. Like you, the trophies of inspiration that I surround myself with in my office is an important reminder, and I think a kind of an energy source confirmation, and you know, that lets you realize when you quickly take a glance at your past, your present, and where you want to go in the future. You know what I mean? That's highly inspiring, dude. I'm really...
Yeah. I spent a lot of time thinking about intuition. What I'm hearing from you and what I'm interpreting is that you have all these sensory inputs. You're feeding yourself constantly, whether you're aware of it or not, but it's feeding the subconscious or wherever your intuition stores this information. And it just sits there and it combines in the background, not even aware of it. And then when you have an inspiration, you just draw from that deep well and out comes something unique.
Dude, I got goosebumps as you tell me this. You know, back there, okay, I have the entire Star Trek crew in dolls with an Enterprise flying over it, and Khan in another spaceship that is hanging, that is flying to attack it, right? And what that one means to me is, as a kid, it ignited me to be able to think futuristically and not be afraid of the stars and something that I couldn't understand, the invisible. Also, not becoming a racist, believe it or not, in any way, shape, or form, because of the magic that I would see on the holodecks and all this stuff, or all, you know, aliens mixing with different kinds of aliens and people and all kinds of stuff, right? Made me really open-minded to like all kinds of visions and stuff. You're right about igniting the subconscious, because when we get older, what happens is, if that subconscious, your child subconscious, the one that's excited, that is willing to run out and explore and get that stuff together, if that is buried and taken over by what one might perceive as the realities of their new reality, you know what I mean?
It's like arteries hardening. They don't work anymore.
You cannot do like what you do, never forgetting being in touch with your child side. I think you really have that too. What happens is, we've got the experience of grown men, but we still have the soul of that exploratory child, you know, the excitement of the child, but with full experience, you know what I mean? Or otherwise we'd never be able to do this shit, dude.
Oh, yeah. And I find, I don't know about you, but I find it a bit of a tightrope, or it's always been a bit of a tightrope walk, where with every year, you know, you gain new responsibilities. And so the world requires from you a maturity and responsibility and reliability. On the other side, to maintain that childlike curiosity about the world and need to explore, that is on the other side of that. And so trying to keep those two things in balance, not lose the childlikeness, but also be able to be responsible and contribute to society. That's difficult.
Wow, man. I always thought that hitting like our age bracket right now, I wasn't expecting it to be like this. Personally, I thought, oh, it's going to be way worse than this. Like, oh my God, we're going to be old. You're past your 60s. You're like, what the fuck is going on? Honestly speaking, I've never felt better when it comes to what lies in the future of the possibilities and the kind of people you attract to yourself by being like that. That's why I think that you get these amazing ideas, concepts, innovations, and people that get attracted to you in order to forward these ideas is because of that state of mind, right?
Yeah.
And by doing that, you're actually spreading that to the rest of the world, even if they don't know it. And it's positive vibrations, as Bob Marley used to say, and good brings good. You've done a superb job on this. I want to recommend to everybody to really go check this out. JT Bass with the brand new, innovative, one-of-a-kind bass preamp made by me. And it's brought to you and made it happen by the one and only Sheldon Dingwall. Thank you for being in my life, my friend. You've always make me smile when I just fucking think of you, even if I don't see you, because I know who you are,
Man, Momo, you're the best, man. And we go way back. We go way back to my first NAMM show, and we've been friends ever since. And you've just been the coolest, most stand-up, most innovative, passionate guy I've ever known.
You too, my friend.